Up from Work podcast. My name's Dave Swillem. Let's get ready to hustle.
Hey, and welcome back to the Waking Up from Work podcast, where we get to work, making work a passion, living creative, full-time. Want to just shout out real quick, the audio quality on this episode today is not as good as it normally is. It is Zoom quality, which is not my favorite. You probably heard me bitch about that before. We had some technical difficulties tonight that came from me getting limited amounts of sleep and then fucking things up really hard on my hard drive when I got back. So sorry ahead of time for that. But today's episode was really good, so I didn't want to try to capture the moment any differently. Tonight we have on Laura Harper Lake from the Creative Guts podcast, hanging out on my podcast after I hung out on her podcast. So if that's not Inception, I don't know what is. But Laura does a ton of different creative things, and she does it all day long in different capacities and places. So she's really perfect to be on the show. And what I didn't realize from being on her podcast so much as I did when I interviewed her is how similar our personalities and some of the things that we have in common, the way that we kind of think or act were. So it was really interesting interviewing her because I felt like I got to interview myself with some of her reactions to things, or like little OCD or mannerisms or things like that. It was interesting to kind of run into out there and exciting to see, I guess. But she does a lot of physical and art-based creative, which we've had Craig Holland illustration and some others that are like a physical art or like a drawn or painted or some type of art, and that side of creative, which I know sometimes I neglect coming from audio and music world. So really excited to have her on today. Next week's episode is going to be Sarah Reitzman from the Creative Guts podcast, is the other co-host of the podcast. I wanted to split them up and kind of get two different perspectives of what makes that show happen. And today we talk about jack of all trades, doing all these different things, and what makes sense to go down further and what makes sense to stop. We talk about digital versus physical in the arts and what pros and cons those might have for stimulating or stopping creative. We talk about putting yourself out there, using creative to find common ground, side quests and distraction, and pursuing new paths, and all these different things. So lots in here. The episode is a little long today, an hour and a half. That's because we were feeling it and we just kept talking, so we let it happen. So once again, hey, thanks for everyone hanging out with us on Instagram every Thursday night at 7:30. Really like the energy of hanging out with you guys. If you haven't and you wanna, every Thursday night Eastern, 7:30 p.m. at Dave Wake Up on Instagram is when this podcast gets cut. Or obviously you're listening to it right here. We love having you here as well. I really appreciate you listening and tuning in weekly like this. Hope that you're getting something out of it. If you want to back us up, you can give us a rating and a review. That helps us just get the word out with all those fancy algorithms out there. That stuff matters a lot. Either way, really appreciate having you hanging out with me and taking the time out of your day to throw this in your ear. All right, episode 62. All right, so welcome everyone on Instagram. Welcome everyone else out there hanging out to the Waking Up from Work podcast. This is your host, Dave Swillem. Today, you're listening to episode 62 of the podcast. Thank you guys for being cool with me taking a week off to kind of take a week of silence and hang out and collect my thoughts and chill a little bit. So it's really nice to be back with you guys, be back live and hang out and talk some creative here. So today, if you guys haven't seen recently, I had the pleasure of hanging out with the Creative Guts podcast with Laura right here and Sarah, who's going to be on next. And as you can kind of see from my history, I very often, if I'm ever on someone's podcast or if I'm ever like have met them from the first time, Laura, I like legit meet someone on LinkedIn or Instagram or somewhere and just start talking to them. And if it clicks, I just get like excited and like immediately I'm like, I know that we're going to have a ton of fun and I want you on my podcast. Like just be here. So if you've seen the history, I was really excited about talking with these guys last week. Wanted to keep the conversation going. So this week we have on Laura. Next week we're going to have the other co-host of the Creative Guts, Sarah, on and kind of split them up. It's divide and conquer of the Creative Guts podcast over here at the Waking Up podcast. So Laura Harper Lake, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. I'm really happy to be here. I don't usually sit on the other side of the microphone, if you will. I'm usually asking all the questions. So
how weird is it?
It's super weird. It
shouldn't be. It doesn't
freaky.
Seem like it's supposed to be. Like it's literally the same exact thing. Only,
yeah, it is. But it's also like I gotta talk about myself. That's weird. I don't know. It's I don't know. It's different, but it's exciting. I do a lot of stuff and I like talking. So I'm happy to share what I'm, doing.
Hell yeah. So for those of you that don't know Laura or you haven't listened to the Creative Guts podcast, first of all, really recommend it. It's really fun, lighthearted way to talk to and see a lot of creatives in New Hampshire. And I'm not sure, do you guys do outside of New Hampshire or just New Hampshire?
We are starting to because of the pandemic. We've actually, typically we interview in person. We have switched that up and we actually had our first international guest. We had Thomas Shea, a really awesome musician from Canada.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah. So for those of you who haven't checked it out, definitely check out their podcast. It's a lot of fun. So Laura is obviously a podcaster. She's the host and founder of the Creative Guts podcast. She is also a multidisciplined artist. Is that how you say it? Multidisciplined artist?
Interdisciplinary, same difference.
And like the list was so much that I didn't feel intelligent enough that I could list out all the different things. So I wanted to let Laura jam out on some of the things that she does, but she does everything ranging from like graphic design and physical arts of multiple different types, as well as music and writing in that way, writing like actual by word, and then also is getting into voice acting right now. So it's just this big pile of creative in a bunch of different ways. And we are a creative entrepreneurship, creative living podcast. So felt good about hanging out with her. By day, she is helping businesses with a nonprofit to do design and art and branding in that kind of way. And then by night, she is doing the Artful Harper, her own brand to create all sorts of things for people by night and by weekend, I'm sure. So did I get that pretty much? Is that Laura Harper Lake in a nutshell?
Yes, that is me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So do you want to just run through, like, I kept that real small. Do you want to kind of, for people that don't know you,
yeah,
just run through who are you, where'd you come from, however you want to?
Absolutely. So me in a nutshell, I grew up in Western Maine, but I went to school at Chester College of New England, which was in Chester, New Hampshire, for studio arts. And I was an artist since I was a little kid, and there wasn't ever really another option for me. I just loved art, always wanted to do it, and knew that would be in my life always. And so I had a lot of, day jobs to get me through after college, but eventually I started teaching myself graphic design, and I became a graphic designer. So I work for a nonprofit called the Regional Economic Development Center, which is a really long name. So we call it REDC. But we're a nonprofit that helps businesses in New Hampshire with alternative lending, technical assistance. And what I do is the graphic design. So a lot of startup businesses that don't have the funds to get a logo and a website going, we help them for free through different funding sources. So
That's awesome.
It's very fulfilling, and it's very stimulating because I'm constantly working with different industries. So I'm very fortunate. I love it. And we can have dogs in our office, so it's double lucky that way.
That's also awesome.
Yeah, yep. I have a dog, Max, who I bring in a couple times a week. Well, right now I'm working from home all the time, but prior to that, he comes in a lot. So that's been pretty great. He's also welcome at my studio, which is at Art Up Front Street in Exeter, New Hampshire. It's an artist collective of 9 artists, founded and run by Rose Bryant, an amazing, wonderful, awesome human being. And I've been there for just over 2 years, I think. And it's just been an amazing experience. For art, like you said, I kind of do a lot of everything. Yeah. Jack of all trades, master of none, I feel is very fitting. If I really, just focused on oil painting, I think I'd be amazing at it. I think I'm just okay at it. Like I just jump around from thing to thing. So the primary ones are oil painting, watercolors, lino cut block prints, digital painting on my iPad Pro in Procreate, and just illustration in general, mixed media. And lately I've been playing with digital collage, which has been kind of a new thing. I've been inspired by some artists that I follow, so I've been playing with that. So I jump around from thing to thing to thing. I also used to do sculpture a lot. In college, I carved soapstone and alabaster, and that was sort of my main thing. I don't do that much anymore because it's very time consuming and you need a lot of resources to do it safely. So it hasn't really been a thing in my life right now, but I'd like to go back to it. I do occasionally build furniture when I need something in my house. So I do some woodworking just out of necessity, really. But I don't know. I just like making and creating, and I like solving puzzles and problems. Like I need something. So instead of buying it, how am I going to create it? The only exception is cooking and baking. That will elude me forever. I am terrible at it, and I don't enjoy it in the slightest.
Really?
Yeah. I hate following recipes, and I hate the mess it makes, and I hate cleaning, and it's just all around. I appreciate it. I appreciate the culinary arts and the people who do it because it just evades me.
Wow. That's like my most relaxing thing to do is to cook. That's like been like a big part of Meg and I's relationship is like cooking on a Friday night or something like that. And like, I just don't think about things. And I don't know. I love it, but also Meg and I have like a divide there too, where like she can bake. And the reason I can't bake is because if you do not follow the instructions for baking, done. It literally will not bake. It will literally stay like a liquid and not turn into the thing.
It's a weird science experiment
because I don't do that. Like I don't do directions. I don't do like bullet points. I don't do like anything like that. I can cook, but I think that's only because I've been cooking for some time now, reading the directions enough so that I know like, I'm going to, I'm throwing that in. I know that's going to turn out that way, and I can just find my way through it. And it always tastes good. So, So
you guys are like two pieces of the perfect puzzle then. You balance each other out. My husband and I are like, okay, who's doing it? Like, come on. Gosh, should we just have cereal for dinner?
Eating thing right now, for sure. How's that happening?
Yeah, it's not fun. I'm not a fan, but I like doing other creative stuff.
See that? What's interesting to me about like, and especially if you go through our podcast, we're at episode like 61 or 62. Well, 62 right now. Okay. We've interviewed quite a bit of businesses, entrepreneurs, musicians, audio engineers, definitely artists too, like Craig Holland Illustrations. We've videographers, photographers. Like there have been some people on the side of physical, but I would say that before I met you and Sarah, I don't think a lot of people in my circle, definitely people in this community, and so happy to have them. But the physical side has always been foreign to me because I have always been working in creatives that are not something that you touch really at all. So it's interesting to me for you to say like, Yeah, like when I need a piece of furniture, I go build it. That's like something that literally would not even come close to crossing my mind. I would be like, I need a piece of furniture, so I got to go buy it.
I mean, I do buy furniture, and I certainly don't make anything anyone would actually buy, but utilitarian furniture I can do, and I like the challenge of.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm not capable of that. I don't think. I'm very, like, puzzle piece minded when it comes to furniture. Like I'm amazing at anything that's like a put together furniture. I can do it, no problem. But like if I were to like look at it to build, I don't know, I'd be pretty weak, I think.
One of my biggest successes, actually, I did build two cornhole toss boards.
Nice.
And for my father-in-law for his birthday or Father's Day or something like that a year ago, and we still play with them. And it's I painted them cool colors, and they work really well, and they haven't broke, so that's amazing.
One thing, I guess, like right there, like I totally didn't plan on asking you this, but now that you made me think that way, you do both. You do like you have gotten into the digital illustrations through your iPad Pro. You're getting through these like collages and things like that. What's your opinion between the physical and the digital? Like you do both of those worlds. Is there one that you like more than the other? Is there one that's providing something over the other one? What do they provide to you? What is it that you see between the two worlds moving forward, I guess?
That's tough. I love both equally, and I like jumping, like with all the things I do. I just like jumping back and forth, and they all give me something different. Working on the iPad, aside from the initial hefty cost, in the beginning, otherwise there's no cost with it, and there's no mess, there's no setup. I can literally go anywhere and draw and paint, and the accessibility of that is great. You can also undo and fix your mistakes. Sometimes with a watercolor painting, you can't undo. You can't take away something that's there.
Right.
But that's a wonderful experience in itself. What happens, and that's sort of got some magic to it too. I love the art community on Instagram and online. And I feel like through digital art, I have connected to so many other artists that way. There's just this kind of inherent, feeling like you're attacking, the same thing together. And it's really nice. For my physical art, my paintings and my drawings, that feels more, appropriate to submit to galleries and to sell. I do sell some of my digital work, but that's I feel a little more rocky on that. And I feel far more comfortable promoting and selling my physical work.
Why? Why?
I think because of my footing with it, my experience with it. I think it feels a bit more natural because I've been doing it my whole life. Whereas digital art, I've been doing for 4, 5 years, maybe. It's still new. And when I look at my favorite digital painter is Loish. I'm a huge fan of her. And if you haven't ever seen her, you should totally look her up on Instagram.
You say that, but I haven't checked her out yet. So I'm going to like probably right when we turn this off, like I will not be able to help myself.
Yeah, she's a huge influencer of many digital artists. And, she's been doing it for a long time. She is a traditional artist as well, but she's made a career as a concept artist, as a digital artist. And she kind of combines the style of Disney and manga and anime and sort of mixes them together to create these very intriguing and, just really fascinating characters with, I feel like I've learned a lot from her. And I feel this connection with other digital artists online as far as sharing and learning and growing together in a way that I feel like, just for me personally, my physical art is sort of more of an insular thing. It comes from me. I am influenced by others from time to time. I mean, we all are, but it feels a bit more I have a foundation in it. I went to school for it. I've been doing it forever, and it feels more natural to me at this point. And I have a hard time splitting my time between the two different kind of arenas, but I jump back and forth as much as I can.
That's interesting. And you know what? Listening to you talk through that felt so parallel to audio, believe it or not, because I grew up interning in a studio that was not full tape at that time. We did do some things in tape, believe it or not, and that was super, super fun, and I'm really into it. But I grew up in a studio that was analog, and it worked on like a computer that the only thing the computer did at that time was record, and it only had like 3 buttons to the software. Like I couldn't do the crazy things that I do now in all the software that I did. So it really felt like I was still working analog at that point. And the same things come out of that in same way with working nowadays with drum samples or drums, or working with tape or analog boards, or, you know, digital, is there are good things to both, and there are things that I love about both, and then benefits and cons of both with it, where if I record an analog or I record to tape, there are that, like, first of all, I live off of the in the moment. That's just the type of person I am. That's why I go live on here, because I can avoid it. That's
so brave.
I perform music, you know, because if I up that song, too bad, is what it is. That's why like, when I'm recording, I love it when I have the mic on, when someone's like taking their coat off and like warming up or something like that, or they heard the first, I'm like, hey, we're going to do a practice take, run through the whole song and just go for it. And then I record the song and I'm like, literally, you just got your first take on that chorus because that's how you felt right now, not under the microscope. Like I believe in the moment. I do believe that I sometimes get that more when I have to, when it's like an analog or a pressed thing where like my board's going to be erased afterwards. I don't have a choice. What's happening right now, that's what it is. If it's a live performance than a recording, that's what it is. There's nothing that I can do to change that with my mind. If I go like psycho on it, creative, like, oh, I don't know, and like question myself, I can't change it. I have to work with my confines. And I think in a lot of ways, working under a confined way can make you be more creative because you have those choices that you have to work inside of. However, the conveniences of being able to sit on a plane and literally mix and resample drums that someone recorded over in California and then sent to me through an email that I got when I was in the terminal, that's amazing. That opens up people that I could have never worked with before. And it still feels really good in giving me the options to totally play around with things and like redo them in a million different ways to be creative in that way. So it's really cool to hear you talk about doing these digital drawings and how that's its own space and gives you its own abilities. And then these physical tangibles, doing it's like the same thing to me. That's interesting.
And I think they inform each other. You know, I find if I'm working on, you know, analog, if you will, I could think, okay, when I try something similar in digital, maybe I'll try doing something differently that is reminiscent of what I'm doing in the physical, and back and forth. I feel like both of them help me strengthen the other in a way.
That is awesome. Oh, I'm pumped. So I totally like zoomed off into like this conversation that we were at, but I did want to I meant to actually, before we got this way, to ask you what made you create the Creative Guts podcast? Why did that have to happen? And what does that name really mean? I guess, what's the meaning of the Creative Guts podcast?
So I had been thinking I wanted to do a podcast. I just thought I want to do a podcast a long time, like probably 3 or 4 months before we actually started doing it. And I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I just knew I had this fantasy of voice acting, and I thought, gosh, like I could just do it myself. I could just practice with a mic and I could talk and maybe people will listen, and, you know, it could kind of evolve from there into maybe a voice acting hobby. And in addition to that, I was talking with a friend, sort of the concept of Creative Guts. I was talking with another friend, and I do a little bit of videography too. And we were talking about creating a video series where we interviewed former Chester College alumni, former Chester College kids, and specifically the ones that are still making art. If you go to school for art school and then 10, 15 years later, you have a day job, it is incredibly hard to keep the momentum going of practicing your passion. And I know a handful, Mike Durkee from Dorkish Delights, who is one of our guests, and who was on here earlier. He is one of those folks that I thought of on my list right away. Like, God, I want to hear his story and like how he says, Mike. Yeah.
Sarah connected with me on, connected me with him on like a Instagram message, and I saw his art, and I was like, I 100% at some point are having you do a band shirt for me, or like a logo, or I love his shit. It's so cool.
You two are like two peas in a pod. Like, you guys are like, everything is possible. Like, let's just do it. Like, you guys have that same energy. And he is one of the folks I was thinking like, God, it'd be so cool to like go to his studio and film him and think of, like find out how he still maintains. I mean, I do it, but it's hard. It is tough. And the video thing never really, panned out. And I thought, okay, so, when you're editing video, you get the visual and the audio. Maybe we just focus on one. Maybe we just focus on audio. And so
awesome.
I kind of had the thought like, oh, this could be the podcast. Like, the two ideas sort of just melded. And Sarah Reitzman and I worked together, and we were sort of newer friends. We had only really worked together for under a year. We were kind of only friends for like 4 or 5 months at that point. We are both, married to big nerds, and we like to all kind of hang out and do the same thing together. And, I'm a nerd too, nothing against nerds. And I burst into her office and said, do you want to start a podcast? And she was like, yes. She just looked at me and said, yes, let's do it. Like, she didn't, she barely even, was like, yep. And, you'll learn, I won't spoil it, but she'll kind of explain why she said yes. There was something going on, and I'll give a hint. There was something going on in her life that made her have that desire to want to do something like that. And so it felt kismet. It felt like fate. Like, we were meant to be friends. Sarah, I love you. And we were meant to make this platform for others to, be featured on, to shine off of, not that we're some big giant thing, but even if it impacts just a few folks, like, mission accomplished. It was great. And so Sarah and I, really, I kind of had the vague idea of what I wanted to do, but having a partner really helps you solidify what's going on in your brain. And she had, 1,001 amazing ideas, and we sort of melded together our visions, and Creative Guts was born. And we played with a bunch of names, we tumbled out a ton of ideas, and in the end, creative, we're focusing on creative. So that kind of felt like the right direction. And Guts. What my original video series was about, people that were still putting themselves out there, which is incredibly humbling and scary. It's just scary.
Yes.
It's scary being a creative and putting yourself out there. And, you're being judged on something you made that reflects perhaps something incredibly personal and deep going on inside you. And you're just showing the whole world and, wearing your heart on your sleeve potentially. And I very much admire folks that do that. It's authentic, and it connects us as humans. And, the more we connect, the more peace there will be, hopefully. We'll understand each other more. I mean, I don't want to talk about the bigger picture of everything, but
universal. It's universal.
It really is. And so art's an amazing connector, and it heals. Like, it's such an amazing thing. Art in general, not just like visual arts.
Yes.
So that's another thing about Creative Guts, is we focus on interviewing tons of different creatives. We have chefs and choreographers, visual artists, writers, other podcasters. Sarah is trying to get an architect on the show. If any architects are out there and want to be on the show, because she works in housing. So she has that whole kind of fascination. We've done fiber artists and, improvers. Geez, I couldn't even think of the name. Comedians, like just tons of, plus a lot of different visual artists. And everyone that I meet and speak with, I just immediately, feel like we've been friends forever, because there's just this common bond of wanting to make and do and create. And it's awesome. It's intoxicating. And then I always kind of have a twinge of like, I want to go do the thing they're doing. I want to like they all inspire me in a different way. Brian Paul, who does improvisation and writing for Dorks and Dungeons, after talking to him, I always, the whole voice acting thing is sort of my pansy way of not actually acting in person, because I have stage fright, but I was like, I could do voice acting, and improving is a great way to experience that, and to do it in front of people scares the heck out of me. And through some other connections, I heard about the New Hampshire Theater Project, and they've been doing some very loose improv stuff, classes online. And so I've done one of those, and I would never have done that if I never met him, he inspired me to try it and do it. And not that it's going to become my main thing, but I think it just, all that stuff kind of builds up who you are. And the more that you try and do, the better you'll be at the things that you're really pursuing. Hopefully.
Wow. That's awesome. There's a lot in there. I guess I feel very connected to you with your talk on being a jack of all trades and master of none. I really feel that I'm that way too. I don't know what it is inside my head where I don't think that I'm the best audio engineer in the world. I don't think I'll ever be. And the reason is because, quite frankly, I don't think that that's the point when for me, right, is if I'm the best audio engineer on the entire planet, but I can't relate or get the emotion out of an artist or work with them to get the right thing, then does it matter? It's like if the tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. That's how I feel on it. So like I will be enough to be dangerous and to perform and give the art that I am promising to people, but I am unwilling to sacrifice the additional time away from all the other things that go into that role to narrow in on just like, okay, this EQ at this degree. And like, I get into that stuff. I'm a nerd too. Like, no doubt, like in the relationship, I'm the nerd heavy piece of the two of us. No doubt. No doubt. Meg's a nerd, but not really. Like, I'm flat out straight up a nerd. I'll ruin Christmas parties left and right. Conversation, no doubt. But I think that the reason I'm so forward on that is because I believe there's a lot of things that go into being the best at something, and it's not always being the best at something. That's how I feel about it. What goes into your process when you're saying, I'm going to try this new thing because I'm inspired on it? What makes you go in where you're like, you're coming from a physical background, now you try the digital stuff, that I can see the progression, but then you're like, and I'm going to do the voice acting and the music and like all these other side quests that build up you as a person, and that's you now. What goes into those decisions of like, this is something I'm going to try, or this is a distraction? Like, what goes into like that being of you for doing these multi different creatives?
First of all, I love that you said side quest to classify those. As a nerd, that's awesome. They really are. Like, music is totally a side quest. Like, it is not going to have me win the trophy at the end of the day, but it's definitely worthwhile pursuing.
You still get like skill points or something from it, but like,
yeah, exactly.
But like, you got like a storyline that you were ignoring for a little bit, and you still got to get back on that trail,
Oh my gosh, that is such a great way to put it all. I have to tell my husband that when we're done, because he'll really appreciate it, because he like is one of those people that has to complete the side quests, And really? I guess in life I'm like that. If something really excites me, like voice acting, I just do it. If I really have that passion, I don't hesitate. I look up what it takes and see if I think I could accomplish it. And if there is as Sarah Reitzman likes to say, a low barrier to entry, that's a term she likes a lot, but basically, something that is accessible enough for me to try my little hand at, voice acting. I already, the podcast was sort of an avenue to build up the inventory to be able to do that. I already had software editing skills from making music for the RPM challenge way back in the day. Yeah. And so it was really just kind of doing the homework to find out what's involved and then just trying it. And, part of Creative Guts, having the guts to try it. Like, I didn't know if I would sound silly or adequate or terrible or whatever. And I recorded some auditions and submitted them and, got some good feedback, got some small gigs from it. Like, nothing it's all kind of in process at the moment, but yeah, I don't know. It's a nice low pressure thing I can pick up and put down. For some reason, the kind of, interdisciplinary ADD that I have, I jump from medium to medium. Sometimes I need a palette cleanse. Lately, I've been doing digital collage, and it's been so relaxing. And I'm working on a couple of really large art projects right now. And when I switch from one to the other, sometimes my headspace just needs like an area of zen and calm. Not that it's stressful work, what I'm doing, but it does require some, mental focus that, I need to relax from sometimes, or else my brain will just like seize up. And so sometimes these little side quests are really just nice palette cleansers.
That's cool. Yeah, I can see that. Like, I take my band seriously, but I also do use that band as a way to palette cleanse from the creative in audio working for people, because I don't have an expectation when I'm writing that music that I'm going to use that as my full-time living. It is what it is. Like, when that comes out, it is what it is. Like, I want it to be successful. I'm just a competitive person, so I want everything to be successful all the time. Mm-hmm. I will be way too serious on whatever it is that I work on. Like, my first live stream, like for some of the live stream shows, I set up all of our live show lights, our PA, absolutely everything. It's like going into music. I don't do anything halfway, but I do not take things serious in the way that, like, I don't plan for it to be the thing. Mm-hmm. And I use that to, working with bands, producing with bands. I love it, but there is a certain piece of it that I can't write their music for them unless like it's like that type of project or something. And it's like, I'm not going to be that person and just do a thing and push my way that far in. So there's a piece of hesitation. There's still a piece that's not allowed out for those projects, that the band is that side quest, if you will, where like, I'm still taking it seriously, but that can be whatever the hell it is. It's right. Exactly what it is. It's just what it's going to be. And it feels good to refresh that, because I'll go out and play some gigs, or I'll write new music, or I'll go in the studio. And not only does it make me feel better to work with the artist, because I literally just went and was an artist like them in front of me on the other side of the glass for a week. And so I understand exactly what they're facing, the exact nerves that they're facing, the exact microscope that I'm putting them under. But it also allows me to be that total different role and express a different piece of me and refresh, I think. But when with the different things, one thing I'd ask you is how do you know if something's like a distraction and you're like, I'm doing this and I'm wasting time, or it's getting in my way of like my main goal, or this is something that I need to continue to pursue? Do you ever think of anything in that way? Or is everything kind of working the way that it needs to between them?
That's a really good question. That's why I like doing interviews sometimes. Like, I get to be self-reflective of things I never really think of. I would say part of it is recognizing your bandwidth for how much you can dedicate your time to. And that's something that I definitely struggle with. If you ask my husband, I probably overextend myself a bit. And,
same thing.
I don't say no to things. I don't not try things.
This the night? Yep. Do you want to try this thing? Yep.
Like, let's just do it. And I think if if I get so excited about it that I just can't stop thinking about it, like it's totally worth the bandwidth, and I will just keep trying and pursuing it. And sometimes I do say no to things, and I know it's not worth my time if it doesn't feel like it's building me as a human, or I'm helping,
Awesome.
people in some way. Like I'm contributing in some way. Sometimes I do stuff that I don't love doing, but I know it's going to make a bigger contribution in a way. And I, in the end, always feel like fulfilled by it. So of course, let's do that. But in general, if, oftentimes it just sort of happens. I fizzle out on things and I never go back to them. And that means it wasn't meant to be because I wasn't passionate about it. I think it just comes down to passion and time management.
Yes. That's awesome.
I'm a master scheduler.
That was like a question, honestly, like selfishly, because I face that. That's like a piece of me that I battle every day, where like I am a very organized person. I am very goal and task orientated to move towards a main goal. But my wife would say it would reciprocate exactly what you said, where she is pretty good at this point. Like she is very good to, she's been around long enough that she knows when I say this will be like an hour, she's like, okay, so I'll see you at 9. She knows the time frames that I'm not doing good at predicting from it. She knows it. Like I cannot fathom how she has like something that she uses as like a formula or something to like figure out like a graph or something, like projects like an object falling, like where will that land at? Like when the trains cross paths, what town will they? Like I swear to God, I will in my head definitively. I'll be like, it'll be a half hour, and she'll be like, all right, I will see you at 7:30, like an hour and a half later. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, stop. 7:30, I roll in and I'm like, how did you do it? And she's like, because I've been with you for 11 years and I know what you do. But it's like, it's definitely something that I learn every day, where I create ideas rapid fire and I pursue them all, and that bandwidth gets hurt, and then I learn from it frequently, fix it, and then I go back to that way. And I'm gotten better every day. But there's no doubt that it's something that I like what you said on it, basically, where like you kind of simplified it. You're like, I am probably doing the same things. I'm chasing all these things, but if it fizzled out, then like there was a reason why that happened. And I think that that's like something that you're not making a conscious decision of, but it's probably happening because subliminally you're like, this isn't yielding what I want from it. Like it's just not doing the thing for me or for anyone. And that's why I'm not staying up late on a Friday night, or I'm not whatever to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. And that happens a lot with certain things that then I'll jump back to, but months later, like I needed we need to take a break. Like sometimes I don't touch my iPad for a month or two. I don't do any digital painting. And then something inspires me. I jump into it. And then that's like the number one thing I can't wait to do when I wake up in the morning is work on this character illustration or something. And I, like you, am very goal oriented. I make a to-do list like once a week at least for my personal ambitions and goals with Artful Harper Studios, with Creative Guts, with any clients that I have for freelance illustration. And I figure out what I have to do and then how much time I have to pursue what I want to do. And then sometimes I get lucky and schedule free time in there.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's probably because you probably enjoy the things that you do to the point where like the free time in that are like all of it's just a gray area that you live in.
Yeah.
That's what I would imagine.
I go really hard at everything. And then like, there's usually like 2 weeks out of the year, like oftentimes in January, where I will do nothing for 2 weeks. Like I will be a complete couch potato. And it usually happens just like once a year. I mean, I definitely, binge watch Netflix and like relax and do all that stuff. But like hardcore, take a break from everything creative, that rarely happens because I just freaking love it. I love it. And to the point where I kind of can you swear on your podcast? Do you let people swear?
Oh, they don't get bleeped. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. I feel like an asshole for thinking this, but I think like, how the hell do people live without art? Like making art or a creative thing. Like there's folks that are capable of it, but don't think they are, or just don't feel the need to pursue it. And I just think, and I know that sounds like, people who are into football are probably like, why the hell don't you like football? How can you not like football?
Yeah.
But like, that's how I feel. Like, how could you not have something that just like awakens you? It makes you like, fueled. Like I feel fueled for the stuff that I take on. And I don't know, like it's rare that burns out.
No, I get that. I don't think that that's an asshole thing to say. I think it's, from your perspective with the way that you live. And I think something like we all have our own philosophy and way. And I think philosophically all the time, like my show is called the Waking Up From Work Podcast. The reason behind that is because I don't believe in doing something that you feel like is work at all.
Yeah.
Like literally in any capacity. And I do have a day job right now that I am not in love with, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what I'm doing. Everyone there is awesome and like it does a great living. Like there's nothing wrong with it. There's just nothing wrong with it. But I am the type of person where I just don't care about anything except for the things that I care about. And I can't think, and I can't even go backwards and think about like before that happened to think any differently of how could I ever do these things for the rest of my life without doing just the things that I love? And then how, alternatively, could anyone ever be just fine with that for their whole? And I cannot fathom it to the very bottom of my soul, because that is just my core fundamentals of how I think. But I'm very aware too that it doesn't necessarily mean that those people don't have a great life because of their paradigm of what they love and don't love and what they brings them joy and not joy. And I'm very super aware that my way of thinking and my way doesn't mean that it's that for them. And it's just interesting between all the different types of people and all the different like ways that you could go about this whole life thing we're all running through to the finish line of what is and is not acceptable. And it's just like, it's literally like what door or box is open and what's not. And that's going to completely determine how you view it. And it's just, I don't know. That shit's crazy.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's like, debating over your favorite flavor of ice cream. We're all finding something that makes us happy. And, I just am like, how do you not like this flavor? Like, how do you not, eat and breathe? Yeah. I'm just so impassioned and ingrained.
What flavor of ice cream? I got to ask now. This is the debate in the household.
What's my favorite?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Gosh.
What's one that you can't fathom why someone would not like that flavor? It can be basic. It doesn't have to go into like super.
I'm going to go with a classic for me just because it's attached to memory, but black raspberry.
Okay. Super on board.
Yeah. I mean, it's not my go-to always, but I feel like if I'm just torn, that's what I'm going to get. It's never going to fail me, What
about chocolate base versus vanilla base? Which way do you roll? Is there like a way?
I'm pretty happy with both. It depends what's going on with it, like cookie dough, peanut butter. I mean, coffee is the only ice cream I don't like. Like that's a lot easier to say. I just don't like coffee flavored anything.
See, here's like, for me, I like all of them, but I'm like a vanilla base roller. You know what I mean? Like I like chocolate. I still actually like chocolate ice cream, but like whenever there's a vanilla based thing that has the things that I like, I roll that way.
Yeah. And
my wife is like, there is no middle ground at all. If you do not like chocolate, I don't understand you. She's like, vanilla is the most vanilla thing. It's literally the statement to say that's vanilla. It's like, that's the thing that sucks because it's basic and you like that thing. And I like and I'm like, listen, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
oh my God.
I need to focus on all the other shit that's happening. I use vanilla as a vehicle. but
and it takes you to the cookie dough or to the,
right.
Caramel. And that's so funny because
all that shit. I want to know what's going on. I'm trying to figure it out. I need something to just keep me going and just let me check out what's going on out there in a million different ways. Chocolate's going to tell me what's up, and I'm not about that. I'm unemployable. I need to just do my thing,
My husband's like chocolate all the way too, just like your wife. That's so funny.
Like yes or no, like just literally it's a yes or no on chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, chocolate's great.
I guess we were just talking about so many different things philosophically. I listened to a lot of Creative Guts podcasts driving around Maine today. And I heard you say a statement that I wanted to bring up, and it kind of springboards off of what we're talking about right now. You were talking about in your art, it is very common to see a floating concept, right? Like with like the hair, like, and I looked at your Instagram too, or like your Artful Harper or something, you can see it, the hair or everything, like everything's always like, it almost seems like there's less gravity to it. Everything's going like upward or it's flowing and it doesn't have too much force down upon it. You were talking about the reason why you do that is because you only live once and you are addicted to the concept of what it would feel like to be floating, just in a way that it's very whimsical and non-caring in any sense, to just be, there's like there's no force at all. Right?
Yeah. It's like a freedom.
Why is it like, what is it about that ties so into the way that you express? Why do you chase that feeling, or what does that mean to you?
Okay. So, other statements I've made repeatedly on the podcast is I'm definitely a high anxiety person. Another thing my husband can attest to. And I have always been a super anxious person, very stressed out, very worried, go back to the house to check the stove, even though we haven't cooked in 3 days. Like I do, something in me lives in this very chaotic, anxiety area. And I didn't even realize I was doing this, but I noticed I was illustrating people with floating hair, people in space, people in water. And it sort of came together that I realized there's this ethereal Zen moment of weightlessness, of not having to worry about a thing, of not having any pressure on you, of being uplifted and not worrying about when you're going to fall from that. Because I, as much as I say all that, I have a great life and I'm super happy and, happy very often. I somehow balance all the stress of everything with, being fulfilled and super joyous. And, I have a wonderful relationship with my husband and I have great friends and great family, and like so much makes me happy. But yet I'm, this duality is combated with this constant fear of something's going to happen to all those good things. And art is a way for me to work through what I'm going through. And that weightlessness of, when I create, illustrating that weightlessness, I almost for a little bit feel it when I'm making it. In some way, it sort of teleports or, transports into me. When I'm painting, when I'm working on a piece of art, I think a million thoughts and I think of nothing at the exact same time. And that's such a weird, contradicting statement, but it's a Zen. It's like everything is filtering through me, but without any emotion. There's no fear or negativity or worrying about what someone said to me that might have had a different meaning, or being like thinking of all the stuff I got to get the nail and have the dog's nails cut and like go through all the stuff I have to, like, there's just so much and it's very tiring. And the thought of just floating in a very, natural state, like in space or water, feels utterly relaxing. It feels like peace.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It is. And I once I kind of realized it, I just kept going with it and it feels very natural. It just sort of comes out.
So we must have like the same type of personality type or something, because I also check all the locks on my house and my car doors like 3 to 5 times. Like it's it ranges.
Almost be excessive.
It ranges. There's some days where I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Someone can go in my car, whatever.
Yeah.
Do it up. Check it. There's nothing in there. There's Altoids if you want them, you know? But then there are some days like, and you know what? It gets worse. If I'm going to go for a trip, if I'm going to go for like away for a week and I know the house is away from me for a week or something, it's actually really, really bad. Like that's where I'm like, I think I have OCD because like I'm trying to leave a house and I actually have to schedule in 20 to 30 minutes extra because I know that I'm going to check the stove. I'm going to check all of the locks to make sure that they're locked. I'm going to check the windows to make sure that rain doesn't get into the windows because that's going to ruin my life. It's going to ruin the carpet that it won't ruin, you know? I need to check out to make sure that something's not plugged in somewhere and that the chemical that the cat could get into is in the cabinet.
Oh my God.
So I freaking get like that.
Yeah.
And then like, I also like when we're talking about, you know, I really enjoy a lot of things that I do. And I'm really into like communicating with people. Like I over communicate. Like I am constantly checking in with people. Hey man, what's up? I'm networking like to like meet people. I'm really always just like in it. And I love that. Like I love feeling like I'm being juggled where I'm like constantly just in motion, just adapting and like that's what I thrive in. But for a week or two a year, I will do something that is so extremist in terms of not engaging in literally anything that it's like very polar opposite where like I will literally, I think I talked about this in the podcast. So sorry for people that heard this episode where I might've talked on it, but I literally like took a trip to go a week away on an island with no electricity or running water. And it was like out in the middle of Lake Champlain, like between Canada and Vermont. And I had to pay some woman who just lived on the lake to bring me as a party boat across the lake. And then the waves were too thick for her to even shore on it. So she anchors out in the water and I had to swim my stuff to shore. And then every day just like use a fire to like cook my food. And I hung out there like a caveman. Like I wore some swim trunks and no shoes and just walked around the island and just
survivalist man.
Nothing. Just nothing. And I need stuff like that, or I go like hiking or whitewater rafting, and I just disappeared. I literally disappear. I like turn my phone off. I like do not talk to anyone. I disappear from the planet like once a year or twice a year. And I think that I do that for the same feeling that you're chasing in terms of that floating or suspension, because I'm so in that movement. Sometimes stop movement, literally entirely. Like almost like I'm in space, like I'm floating in space, like just kill any type of force, be it good or bad. It could be good forces. I just like net zero, so that way I can net zero my head.
Yeah.
Figure what I'm up to, you know, and redefine what I'm up to, refigure how I think about something. So it's
I love
really
that.
funny to hear you talk on that.
Yeah. It's like a reset button.
Yeah. I need that. You know, that game. So
we all do.
Laura, I have 5 questions I like to ask at the end.
Okay.
I know you guys do like a rapid fire, which is, I think that's deadlier than mine. So these are easier.
Okay, good.
So this one, I kind of get through the podcast. I always preface it like this because I kind of get it through it, but I like asking it pointed because I feel like people think about it differently. And I say, what made you pursue these arts? Or it could be the podcast if you want, but I think arts just because it's been longer ingrained in a root in your life. Why is this the thing that you had to do in the 3rd grade or however old you were? Like, why is this the thing that you decided I now need to make every aspect of my life to be this thing for the rest of my life against, we were just talking earlier, you love football or you love whatever it could have been. There's a million options. Why is this the one thing?
It gives me joy. And I don't know what else could make me happier.
Fair.
I mean, I I just love making. And when I was a kid, I would collaborate with others, so it was probably a bonding experience. Um, and I
Sure.
found that the more that you worked at something, the better you were. And I also found that it was a great emotional release. It was a great way to process emotions. I
Yeah.
lost my father when I was 10 years old. And, when you have a death of a parent, when you're in elementary school, they make you do counseling with the, guidance counselor. And
Yeah.
she gave me a block of clay to work with. And there wasn't any assignment. It was just
Here's this.
create. Yeah. And I mean, I was definitely making art prior to that loss, but I think that processing that kind of thing definitely, on a subliminal level. I don't think I was a 10-year-old kid realizing this is how I can art therapy, but
Yeah.
looking back, I see what was happening. I was able to get stuff out, and I am like a hypersensitive. Like, I see something on TV and I feel it, whether a character is embarrassed or scared or really sad. Like, it takes me that much to cry. Like,
Wow.
I feel incredible. Like, I feel a little too much sometimes. And,
Yeah.
whether it's processing my own stuff or just feeling in general from all over, art helps me translate that, and it just makes me happy. And I feel proud when I do it. Like, I feel I've accomplished something, I've produced something, and perhaps it won't be, a Greek statue that lives there for the test of time, but especially with digital, I mean, I feel like after I'm gone, some of the stuff I made somewhere will exist. And that's kind of, after it all, is a nice thought too.
Legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I remember I was a drummer first before any of the other stuff I got into. And that used to help me a lot with, like, when I was a kid, I had bad, bad, bad anger. I had a
Mm.
huge anger management problem. And drumming is such a physical thing. Instead of like going in and like beating the shit out of like some cabinets or dressers that I had, or like punching a hole in the wall or something, which like no doubt that happened at some points, right?
Yeah.
Instead of that, I could just go play some metal music and just beat the living shit out of my drums and cymbals. And I broke cymbals and I broke sticks and I broke tom heads and shit. But like that was something that could be replaced at like an okay cost and not make people upset over it. And that would just get it out. Like when I was done, I would practice. Like I did this in college too. Like sometimes I'd practice 6-7 hours, just hang out on a Saturday and then by the time it was over, I was good. Like everything that I had to get out, that was left there. It was left wherever the creative or the thoughts happened, and I was good. Like I didn't have to do that.
That's awesome. What a great kinetic way. Like, it's just perfect.
It's like boxing.
Did you, yeah, for that, did you, how did you decide to start? Like, did someone suggest that, or did it just sort of happen and you realized, oh, this is a great way to kind of get it out?
No, I picked out drums in the 3rd grade when they gave us like options in like a high school during the summer. They had like each room had an instrument you could try, and I picked out the drums just because I have no reason why. Like that's what felt right for me. And then I didn't pick up a drum set till the 7th grade. And I probably didn't get super mad until around probably the same time. And no one suggested it to me. I just happened to have picked that instrument, and it just happened to be like the instrument that I was supposed to have done at that time.
Oh, that feels kismet.
Yeah. I don't know. So what do you like throughout the process? Can be anything that you're up to. Say you could take the lesson that you learned from it and magically like pop that into someone's head. So like you gave it to them pill and they ate it and they learned the lesson. What would be like the worst thing that you feel like you've done along the way, or like the thing that like hey, take this lesson from it, because everything has a lesson and it happens for a reason, I think. But don't do this thing because that sucked. If you can legitimately learn this thing without experiencing it, don't do this along the way. What would you tell someone not to do in the creative way?
Just the first thing that pops to mind is don't not try something. As in, don't let something hold you back from pursuing a creative passion. I have stage fright, as I mentioned, and I in high school, I like to sing, and I always wanted to act, and I act in my bedroom alone like a dweeb, but I never tried out for a school play or a school musical. I never pursued anything like that. And why not? Because I was afraid of what people would, say or judge me. And I think I've wasted so much time not trying certain things creatively, because of my perception of others. And maybe other people, some folks don't have that same fear or worry, but why didn't I try those things? I really wish I had. And not that it's too late now, but I'm sort of ingrained with so many other things,
Right.
That's, I've done, a little bit of improv online, and I'm trying voice acting. And so that's kind of a sliver of that. But I feel like what you work on creatively influences you as a person all over. Everybody is creative, like my main passions are very obvious and visual creatively, but everyone's creative. You solve problems at your job. You're creatively, creative thinking. So don't think I can't try something. If you're 8 years old and you're like, gosh, I wish I'd tried pottery, there's nothing stopping you. You should go try and do it. And don't care about if your family's going to make fun of you or someone's going to say something. Like, I think living in the fear of like judgment from others, as long as you're not hurting anybody, honestly, like, go do your thing. Like, go,
I believe that hard.
Go be a fashion model, do whatever. I mean, even if there's adversity or it's hard to try to get into, I don't think I'm going to be some famous voice actor. I don't think I'm going to be on commercials necessarily. Like, I think it's going to be a fun hobby where it might help me be a better person. I might learn things from it. I might have fun doing it. Like, that's it, and there's no reason I shouldn't try to do it. And it's scary when I like audition and submit it and I just listen to it 7 times, did I sound okay? But I'm not thinking in the same terms that I was, as far as, am I going to be judged for sounding stupid? Just, am I going to be judged for getting picked for a job or not? Yeah. And it feels way healthier. It feels way better. And I wish I had learned that as a young lady when I was a lot younger.
I am really like, man, I get fucking fueled up about judgment on yourself. I will talk about that for a while. Anyone out there who listening to the podcast, if you haven't seen it, Laura, if you haven't seen it, it's legit. I made with Craig Holland Illustrations, one of the people that was on the show, on our Instagram page at Dave Wake Up. There's a little comic. It's a digital comic where you swipe between the panels.
Okay.
It's actually like a concept that I came up with of something that just happened to me, where like when you go to that family or friend barbecue, so like you're at the barbecue, you go to barbecues with people that you know and you trust usually, right? Mm-hmm. Or you go to like your friend's family's barbecue, or you go to your significant other's family's barbecue, or you go to like, in some way, like you do care about the opinions that are there usually.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was so used to going to places and having to explain, what do you do? I'm an audio engineer. And have people be like, great, so when you fail at that, what real job are you going to do? I got so sick of hearing that. I was like, dude, I'm making money doing this right now. All I need to do is reduce my overhead and then I'm full time. Like people don't understand. People judge you when they don't understand what it is that you're doing. So like for you to take a chance on the voice acting, or for me to take a chance on my music, right?
Yeah.
Things that we're venturing out on. If you don't have an expectation on yourself that you're going to adversely judge yourself on trying it, then no one else who isn't in a position that does that has the ability to judge you and then for you to suck in that judgment to put on yourself on it. It's just, there's no perspective that they would be allowed or why you should receive that judgment. It's just like, it's irrelevant and it's so frustrating. And I'm getting soapboxy, but like, I totally am with you. Fuck judging yourself. Seriously, do whatever it is. When you taste test it and it feels right, then just go do it. And then like the results will yield the results. And that's what you can use to dictate what you're doing.
Yeah.
Never
I wish
I
mean, when you're a teenager, you know, a lot of folks go through that, you know, self-doubt and all that stuff. But I really wish I had tried that kind of stuff, or even in college. There was theater stuff in college I should have done. And I just was too afraid to get up in front of people. And the only time I faced that is when I started playing music. I did play music in front of people, even though it scared me. And something worked out. I was in a band, or, you know, I wasn't alone in it. And I was able to overcome some of that.
Flip side to that. So what would you say is the best thing you've done along the way? Like what we're like, this is the best idea I've ever had.
Gosh, that's so hard. I guess, a quick answer is creative guts as far as like just pursuing a thing. I would say like I ran into Sarah's office and was like, you want to start a podcast? And she was like, yeah. And like, we didn't stop doing it. We just kept going. And I think that was a scary thing, you know, trying an endeavor of, you know.
Hell yeah.
Like that was
the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Still the shit out of me every week.
Yeah. It's a big endeavor. It's like a big thing. And it's just a passion, just a labor of love. Sarah and I are definitely not trying to make money off it. We're not trying to monetize it at all. We're, you know, breaking even would be lovely, but that's not what it's about. It's about like connecting to a bigger community and helping others feel the possibilities, you know? So, with my personal art, sure, I have some financial goals. It would be great to do that full time, or it would be great to make a certain amount. I do well enough that it definitely is, you know, paying for itself and all that. But yeah, I'd say, you know, guts in general. The only other thing I can think of as far as like a grand accomplishment in very recent days is the mural I painted on the side of Art Up Front Street.
I have to come see it. I'm going to come see it sometime.
Do it and take a selfie with it. That's what we're trying to tell folks to do.
Nice.
It's, because it's about Polaroids and snapshots, so it just kind of feels fitting. But I was terrified to do that. I had only done 2 or 3 murals, interior, much smaller in my adult life. Like I had not done anything that big, that public, outside. Like it's such a big, you know, whole new thing to learn. But I like doing what scares me. And I would say like the first 2 hours of actually doing it were terrifying, and the rest was a blast and not scary at all.
Right. That's awesome.
Yep. Once I got the chalking done, I outlined where I was painting. And once I had like that sketch, which is kind of a good analogy for like trying anything, like write it out, sketch it out, plan it, you know, make a to-do list. And once it's in writing, it's way easier to do and it's way less scary because you have a roadmap you've, you know, made yourself.
You get scared when you write it. If it's like, you already get scared.
Yeah.
It already takes out some of the scaredness because you're like, oh, that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you write something on the calendar, it's going to happen. I'm a huge advocate, like you said, goals, but I write things out like in a journal daily. I read it before I go to bed of like what's happening tomorrow and like what my expectations are. And then like in the morning, like again, I read it and have like a couple different systems of like looking out in different ways, short and long term. But when you write it, it becomes real in some capacity, even if it's not like an actual tangible thing that like now happens, even if you fail at it or you forget to do it or never have it.
Mm-hmm.
When you write it, it's still real in the sense that like you wrote it as an expectation that you're putting into the world, and it's either going to be fulfilled or not fulfilled, but subliminally or like however you act is still engaging in that being a priority in some way. So I'm with you on writing.
Yeah.
For sure.
It makes
I have an episode out there, like going back to what you said of like the best thing you did. Best idea I had was starting Creative Guts. I have an episode on here. It's a solo episode really quick called like go start a podcast or something now. Like it was really like when you get into it, I talk about just creating whatever content that you want to create, creating it on a consistent schedule. And it's because of the benefit that I've seen from having a show like this too, because you just meet people more. You learn things about yourself. Like when you reflect like that, when you talk to someone else that you haven't talked to like you, right? And I've seen too many benefits from it to not do that sooner in my life. I would have done it sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Easy, couple easy questions. These are way easier. So this one would be for this audience. Are there any resources that you'd recommend? It could be a website or videos or book or podcast, or what's a resource that you'd recommend in the spaces that you like to be in?
Interesting. For digital art, I mentioned Lowish, and I will repeat it because I am such a fangirl of hers. And I would say that's a really good resource. Oddly, I'm going to jump into the music world. The RPM Challenge, if folks are not familiar with it, it typically happens in February. If you go to rpmchallenge.com, you will see it's a challenge to write and record one album of music in the month of February. And they did it again in April for a second time, just because of being, everyone quarantined, pandemic style, at home all the time. So I didn't do February's, but I ended up doing April's, and I made music under the name Space Cadetter. And I did a small EP, and I got a MIDI keyboard, and I made music all through GarageBand, which I've never done before. So I did a whole new thing. And the community of RPM Challenge, like they even write, not, on the forums, not during the actual challenge. Like so many people are up for helping others with technical issues, concept ideas. Like it's just a great forum for collaboration. And
that's an awesome name.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. That's Space Cadetter. Yeah. I do a lot of stuff I love like outer space and NASA and everything like that. So I kind of get all wrapped up in that. And I feel like I'm a bit of a space cadet. Like I'm off in my own little dream world. And my mom used to say that my head was in the clouds constantly, just imagining. So it just felt like a good name, but that's a good resource. I don't do music a ton, but when I do, it's usually connected to that. So as far as other stuff, for folks in New Hampshire, I'm going to do a plug for a resource. Stay Work Play is a nonprofit that encourages people to stay, work, and play in New Hampshire, and they do a ton of advocacy and community-based stuff. And I am actually a writer for one of their blogs. I write the arts and culture blog section. Sarah does 2 blogs with them. And then they have on their site different sections for like outdoor stuff, parents, and like young professionals, and, how to change policy and be a lawmaker, and, arts and culture. And, Sarah does a piece on housing and stuff like that. And I'm sure other states have this too. So if you're listening elsewhere, try to dive into these resources. But like, there's so much opportunity for so many different things where you live. And Stay Work Play is trying to harness that to show young people what's available in New Hampshire. It's like, there's just so much to do, and you might not be aware of it. And like diving into all of that, not just in the arts and culture world or the creative world, but like, what is it? Boards and Pints. There's a bar, a game. Yeah. There's a board game bar in Manchester, and like there's just tons of cool things that you don't know are there. And part of it is connecting with others, because studies have shown like you're most likely you want to stay living where you're living if you have a community, if you have friends, if you have family, whatever that community is around you. And so just in a grand scheme of things, Stay Work Play is a really good resource for finding out different things like that about New Hampshire.
That's cool. Yeah, I knew about that community before. I didn't know that you guys were affiliated actually until like the other week when I talked to you, or I listened to a podcast or something and heard you mention it. And I was like, that's too funny. For those out there that are in other states other than New Hampshire, what's going on here is, and you're going to have better insight on me, Laura, and this would be like its own thing to talk about. So maybe I'll get into more of it with Sarah.
Yes.
But we have most of our people go to college, like say like they go to college in a state school in New Hampshire, they still friggin' leave. Like we have a big problem here in New Hampshire with younger kids not staying here to work for companies, not staying here to start small businesses, and not staying here to educate and do all of these other shit that we need to have happen here. They do stuff here, they get educated, or they do internships, or they do things here, and then they leave, and that's a problem. And that's why Stay Work Play New Hampshire is here as a way to highlight, okay, we hear you for sure, but here's what is here. If you're not aware of it, these might be all the things that you need and you just didn't know about it. And for people out there, like, and sorry ahead of time, because I am considering leaving New Hampshire because of like a very weird property type, and I'm a super Granite State boy, so I'm salty about it already of the possibility of it. However, the reason why I advocate for New Hampshire, and I do all the time on this podcast, is we have a very weird state where if you are a Granite Stater or you're ever interested in coming here, that shit is here. It's spread out though, and it's in pockets, and you have all of it, and you basically have to kind of like work like you're a chef and taking the things that you want when you want them and going to that spot to do it, is the way that I've felt about it, where like there is amazing music that comes out of here. There's amazing art. There's amazing businesses. There's amazing creators. There's amazing things to go out do, like for outdoor events, for cities that are doing concerts and nationals and all sorts of things are all happening here. It's just in different parts of the state. And definitely an advocate for it. And then like I've talked about it on the podcast before too, to say like, you know, I'm an audio engineer. People give me shit all the time being like, go dude, move to LA, move to Nashville. It used to be New York City until that got like actually really shitty for audio. But people will be like, why would you possibly live in New Hampshire? And the reason I talk about it, and this is applicable to other creatives, I believe, is that you can either be a small fish in a big pond, right? So you can be in Nashville, you can be in LA, you probably fucking crush it, like no doubt, right? Tons and tons and tons of work, tons and tons and tons of competition. Or you can be in New Hampshire, or you can be in Maine or Vermont or something. Less work, no doubt. There's less musicians here. There might be less creatives here. But once you find your community, then you can be one of the 6 people that is insanely stupid good at the thing that serves that community. You can stay right here. And maybe you like living here more. And that's going to be like my end of my persuasion of like, you live wherever the fuck you want. And there's a million ways that you can totally achieve living in that space, especially in the digital age. And if you don't believe that after COVID, I don't know how else to explain it.
Oh my God. Seriously.
What is possible nowadays with what we have as tools to live where you want to live and create creative that you want to live. Sorry, I'm jazzed on that. I found out you guys were into that. I was like, I'm on board. I am. Yeah.
Stay Work Play is amazing. They are so great. It's such a great nonprofit. And Sarah has been writing for them for quite a long time. And at one point we interviewed Will Stewart, the executive director, on Creative Guts. Wow. And in the interview, Sarah was like, gee, Laura, why don't you write the arts and culture blog? And I was like, oh no, I couldn't. And then Will's like, do you want to? And I was like, oh, gee, no, I don't. What, me? And then I emailed him and said, were you for real? Because I love the art scene in New Hampshire. So I'm already pretty much reporting on it through Creative Guts. I literally already do it. So would it be that much harder for me to write about it once a month? Like, it's not that much. So he was like, heck yes. And I've been doing it for I don't know, almost a year this summer, and I really like it. I really like doing it.
That's awesome. Last question is the easiest and least stress. Where do people find you? Where do people find Art Harper Studios and Creative Guts podcast and everything? What sites or places can they hang out with you, Laura?
Super easy question. So for my art, artfulharperstudios.com. Artful Harper is kind of like the Artful Dodger. That's sort of where I got the name. It's on, the website, obviously. And then Instagram and Facebook, my handle is at Artful Harper. And creativegutspodcast.com is where you can find all of our episodes, including anywhere that you download podcasts. And our handles are Creative Guts Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. I have a big cartel shop for Artful Harper, but you can find that through my website and my Instagram. So I don't need to say that whole long domain. Cool. Yeah, those are, and if you really want to go down the weird rabbit hole, Space Cadetter is my name on SoundCloud.
No way. I got to check that out.
My little EP. It's five songs that are definitely a little spacey.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Laura Harper Lake, thank you for joining me on the Waking Up From Work podcast. For those of you that are listening right now, you'll hear Sarah, the other co-host, next week, and we're going to get into some total other stuff too. So it should be a lot of fun. Thank you for hanging out, Laura, again.
Thank you so much. I had a blast. It was so fun talking to you.
We went long tonight. We went an hour and a half, and I know an hour, so that means that we were jamming hard.
Damn, that's good.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for episode 62 of the Waking Up From Work podcast. Really happy you guys hung out for this. If you're still here right now, then you're a trooper. That was a long episode, so that means you hopefully got a lot out of it, or you were running or doing something where like it was too much of a pain in the balls to stop listening. But either way, we're really happy that you hung out for this. So if you want to catch the other piece to the puzzle here for the Creative Guts podcast, and then next week on episode 63, you're going to hear the story from Sarah Reitzman, who is the other co-host of the podcast that Laura does with her on really a different piece of creative. I would say that this podcast here is more on like the business and mindset and living, whereas theirs is more on the creative itself. But we have a ton of crossover, which is why I get along so well with them. So if you haven't had a chance, definitely recommend go over there, check out the Creative Guts podcast. They're great. Check out some of the resources that Laura put out there. If you want to go to wakingupfromwork.com/show notes, you can check out those as links to click on if you want to check out her page and things like that. If you want to hang out with us live, at Dave Wake Up on Instagram, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We will be live with Sarah if you want to catch it as it goes, or any of the other stuff in the future. Just want to thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I hope you are making a lot of shit this week. All right, cheers.